This episode is proudly supported by Fine Food Australia. It's only a few weeks until Fine Food Australia, the country's leading trade event for food service and hospitality, is back on in Sydney. As a professional in the food industry, you know the importance of staying ahead, discovering new trends, connecting with suppliers, and finding the inspiration to move your business forward. For over 40 years, Fine Food Australia has been the ultimate destination for chefs, restaurateurs, cafe owners, food retailers, and distributors alike. With over 900 exhibitors across 12 product categories, featuring both local and global brands, Fine Food Australia is where you'll find what's next, what's new, and what's driving the food industry forward. Make sure you register online before the 8th of September to secure free trade entry, so you don't have to pay $45 at the door. Don't miss Fine Food Australia on from the 8th to the 11th of September at ICC Sydney Darling Harbour. For more information, go to www.finefoodaustralia.com.au.
We have kind of created our own little community, and all I want to do is build on that and just expand that. The whole feeling of feeling like you've walked into our family home, like it is our second home and it's our second family that works there. So if people can appreciate what we're doing, then I think that's the greatest thing about creating Thermidor.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. How do you create a venue that fulfills your dreams of a restaurant and acts as a kind of love letter to diners? A venue that becomes a part of the community and puts your sense of hospitality on display. Today, we're joined by Jess Gregory, co-owner of Thermidor Oyster Bar and Brasserie in Newcastle, who, together with her partner, has done just that. Jess, how are you?
Really good, thank you. Yeah.
It's good to get you on the show. You've created an amazing establishment there in Newcastle, a really sort of thriving centre at the moment. But how are things going there?
Yeah, good. We're coming out of obviously quiet winter period and almost hitting our 2-year mark. So I think in the last 6 months we've done a really big reevaluation of who we are and what we're doing. I think at the start we didn't really have a great sense of identity, and that's something that we're working on at the moment. So it's really good coming into 2-year mark. We feel like we know who we are and what we're doing a little bit more as well than when we first started. So yeah, it's built ups and downs, highs and lows, as I'm sure everyone says, but we're loving it every day, which is true.
Sort of finding that sense of identity as an establishment usually takes a couple of years. What's it been like for you? Is it a kind of a mix of what you guys want to do and the response of the community and how they sort of utilize the restaurant?
Definitely. I think when we first opened, we had this little mantra of let's be a neighborhood eatery, a restaurant for everyone. And after the first honeymoon period and then hits the first, slow winter season, we kind of felt like we found who our diners were. And, there's no harm in admitting that, you're not a restaurant for everyone and you've got a certain philosophy that you need to follow, and trying to find the balance between what's needed in Newcastle and what kind of we need from the venue, and finding that kind of great mix in the middle. So
tell us a little bit about Newcastle. There's been quite a few restaurateurs from Newcastle on Deep in the Weeds over the last couple of years, but it seems to have had a really interesting sort of culinary evolution. What's great about it from your perspective?
I think people are just more confident in doing what they love to do and putting themselves out there in a restaurant. I feel like 10 years ago, there was a lot of cafes, they were all pretty similar, and then the high-end restaurants, but there was never really that in the middle mix. And now as Newcastle is growing and the demand for that, slightly better than average restaurant is there, more people are just being more confident in doing those styles. So yeah, I just think availability of really great produce in the area, as well as, restaurateurs that are, Josh and I's age, coming up and realizing they don't need to work for a hotel. They can do their own thing and they can build their own little community. There's more of that in the area. And I think it just gives other people the confidence, and especially Josh and I, it gave us the confidence to then be able to say, okay, well then if they're doing it, then we can do it too.
Yeah. Well, how did you land on Newcastle in the first place?
Well, I grew up in Newcastle, Josh in the Hunter Valley, and we worked, when we were down in the Southern Highlands, we really just kind of longed to open a restaurant back home. And we always thought that the Hunter Valley would be where we would meet and where we would create our restaurant. And then the more that we worked in the Hunter and the more, I think post-COVID as well, it became such a more tourist destination, which is, while it's great for the area, we always felt that we wanted somewhere where, we knew our customers' names by like first names. We knew what they liked to drink. We knew their families and their families could come in, and we just didn't feel that we could really do that in the Hunter Valley. The Hunter Valley is great for support, but the closeness to Newcastle, most of the wineries and locals, they all have a house in Newcastle Beach and they go there on the weekends. So that's where they're creating their community and their dining community. So then that's when we struck Newcastle.
I know you mentioned that you grew up there, but how different is the food scene sort of there now compared to sort of when you were much younger?
When I was much younger, we didn't really eat out much. I mean, it was more of a takeaway and, the local pub was our going out meal. And whilst I think that is still very relevant for a lot of families, there's just I think the quality has just escalated. In terms of the basic cafes, coffee culture is definitely the biggest change that I've seen, from going to Gloria Jean's as a kid to now cafes that are around. I think coffee culture's brought a sense of community to the food scene. And then just every time someone ups the quality, like everyone else is kind of shifting towards that as well.
You mentioned you grew up in Newcastle. What was it? What was it like in the family when you were young? Was food sort of important to the family growing up?
I was having this conversation with Josh. Like I don't have stories of, my grandma used to put me on the bench and we'd bake a cake together. Like we didn't really do. We just cooked. It was very basic. I lived with my mom, being a single mom, and then moved in with my dad, who was, was a single dad, and it was just food was dinner, and it was meat and potatoes and a couple of veg and maybe a spaghetti bolognese here and there. My nan on my dad's side always baked, and I can still remember all the slices and marshmallow slice that she used to create. But it really wasn't until post-high school that I even, I was saying to Josh, I think I had my first prawn when I was like 19 years old, which is crazy because I just was eating so basic and I just ate what my family ate. And it wasn't until I started working in hospitality that I was really exposed to all of the other foods and, classic dishes and things like that. Yeah, until like post-high school.
Well, take us back to that sort of period of time. When did you sort of make the call to, or how did you get your sort of foot in the door with hospitality as a potential career?
So in high school, I was very studious, but I was never kind of a fan. History, geography, science, none of those subjects really appealed to me. I was very much a maths or hospitality, business studies subject taker. So in year 11 and 12, when you pick your own subjects, I did business studies, which I always knew that I either wanted to run a business like from the top or own my own. And then hospitality, I just got a really great teacher, and she wasn't a food tech teacher who'd just been in industry, like in the teaching industry. She was ex-chef. She used to tell us these really cool stories about, working in a pub and working the hours and all the food that she used to create. And she just, I don't know, we just really had a good connection. And then when the Hunter TAFE, the local TAFE came and did like a little career expo, I just thought, you know what, I think I don't see myself going to uni, but I think I can see myself going to TAFE to study hospitality.
What was that experience like, and where did you get your foot in the door in regards to sort of working and venue early on?
So I thought my career path was going to take me to, financial, hotel, big corporate. I really wanted to move up the ladder, I guess, and maths and finance always fascinated me. So I kind of thought that my career was going to go that way. I had, after school, every intention of enrolling at the International College of Hotel Management in Adelaide. And then, as every 18, 19-year-old girl does, she goes out in town, meets a boy, questions her life decisions, which is my now husband. And he worked in a restaurant, was thinking about becoming an apprentice. I didn't really want to leave, so I was like, you know what, I can go to a TAFE here and then, move to Adelaide at another time. So I went to TAFE at Hunter Valley Hotel Academy, which was a curry TAFE that was just built at the time. And started working in a little local restaurant. I just replied to an ad, I think it was on Seek, as a casual, and started working at this very large, very busy tapas restaurant in a winery. And that was my first intro, and then started studying just a diploma of hospitality management. Pretty much, yeah, do it for a boy.
Well, what were those early years like for you, sort of starting to learn your craft? Do you have any stories of that period of time?
Yeah, I definitely thought, I think every 18, 19-year-old thinks that, once they've been at a place, okay, I know everything, let's move on, let's try and jump the ladder. I worked at Tatler, which was the tapas restaurant, for about a year and a half. And whilst I did originally think that it was just, a job to see me through, get me through TAFE to then move into hotels, the more that I spoke to people that did work in hotels, and they just didn't have a connection to the restaurant owner, whereas I was working side by side. I was working with the owner's daughter. I was working with an ex-TAFE teacher, and I just felt a part. I became a part of the family in that restaurant. And every other place that I have since worked, I don't know, something struck a chord with me to work small family business. And I haven't really strayed from that. I feel like when you're connected to the owner and, you have a valued input into systems or procedures, or, a small comment could tweak a service, and like you've had that direct impact. I don't know, it just makes you feel good. And I knew that if I went to a hotel, I'd be starting at the bottom. Would I be just a number? How long would it take me to climb this ladder? When, my second job was a trainee supervisor at Margan Restaurant, and I could climb, and I wanted to get to the top, I guess, as fast as I could, whilst also learning as fast as I could. I think moving to Margan and doing that step up in terms of fine dining service and the customers and the feedback that I would get, I think that's kind of the moment that I was like, actually, maybe I want to stay in small restaurants and kind of build my own.
Well, you've worked at some pretty incredible venues before you opened your own. What's some of the really important sort of venues to you and people that you worked with as you started to build your career?
Yeah, like I said, Lisa Morgan definitely took a shot on me, and I probably, at the age that I was, shouldn't have been a trainee supervisor, but she saw something in me. I was very studious. I learnt the menu. I, rehearsed my interview so many times to get that job, and that's what led me into fine dining. And then since then, I think Sally Molinez from Bistro Molinez, even though that job was just a little interim casual job, I think it's had the biggest impact on me in terms of how a restaurant makes you feel. And if anyone's ever driven up the mountain to Bistro Molinez and sat looking at the view and had the service that she does, I think you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, I used to just work casually there. It was the only job I've ever hysterically cried when I left, even though I was moving down to the Southern Islands and I couldn't stay. Just because of the feeling that you got within the team, the feeling that you could give everyone else. And I think I tried to emulate that in everything that I've done so far. down to the smell of, the petit fours sitting on the gueridon, and you can smell the madeleines, and you can smell the friands through the dining room, and the fresh flowers and the tablecloths, and the friendly service, and then the food complements, the whole experience. That's definitely been a pivotal moment in how I like to create a dining space. And then I think the next major restaurant that I went to down in the Southern Highlands, Biota Dining, Josh and I actually started there. They needed a chef, and we sent an email and we said, "Do we have a chef and also a waiter? Will you take her as well?" kind of thing. And they were like, "Yeah, we'll flick you some shifts in the bar." And I knew when I started, I was only there because, they needed that chef in the kitchen, and I kind of just came along with it. But moving, I think James definitely saw potential in me. I became assistant restaurant manager within, I think it was about 8 months starting there. So I moved from casual bar to, running the restaurant behind the manager, working in the office, creating weddings, accommodation. I pretty much did it all. And I think James, in terms of my career, he definitely, and I'm not even sure how he taught me this, but he taught me the ability to be able to fix any situation that comes up. Like, there's a problem, I can sort it out. And I think he always did that, and he always trusted and encouraged us to think for ourselves instead of, being told what to do all the time. And he really shaped the kind of manager that I am today, and the kind of attentiveness and just the confidence to say, "Yep, there's a problem. This is how we're going to do it this way, this way, this way. And let's get it done." So.
What was it like for you moving away from the Hunter to the Southern Highlands? Did it take some adjusting, sort of that big change?
It definitely took some adjusting. I never really thought Newcastle was going to be, I guess, my forever home until I left it. I always had the longing to, hotel management. Maybe I'll go to New York or move to London. And I always kind of wanted to move away. And then when you finally move away, and then something keeps pulling you back to home, that's when I knew that Newcastle is where my heart was. And I think I took it for granted as a kid and as a young adult living there, because I always thought, where am I going to live? Where am I going to travel to? Where am I going to move away? And then, once you start thinking about having a family, you think, well, where would I want to have that family? And Newcastle was just always in the forefront.
Mm. You eventually made a move back up to that region. What was it like sort of returning and getting back into the hospitality scene there?
It definitely had changed. And I guess my perception, at that time, we didn't have a Two Hat restaurant in the Hunter Valley, and I'd just come from Biota. Biota was a very, very serious. So you're on your game all the time. And even though it was, a small country town in the Southern Highlands, James was very much like, we are the elite. We are on par with Sydney restaurants, and that's how we work. And it was not necessarily a step backwards, but moving back to the Hunter Valley, everything goes a little bit slower. Trends kind of don't seem to hit there as fast as Sydney, and then what James was taking from his media company. So it kind of felt like a little step back. And this is why Josh and I were like, let's open a restaurant. Let's do what we're doing. Very naively, because I definitely don't think we would have survived a restaurant if we built it back then. So then, he kind of starting and then relearning, who the Hunter Valley customer is and why people are visiting the Hunter Valley for a little slow living, a wine tasting, relaxation, not really there for the food. I mean, Mia's restaurant was there at the time. We started working at EXP, which was only a year old when we started, and now they're celebrating. So, everything was kind of just being born again, I think, in terms of the fine dining aspect. Margan was established, of course. But I think we personally had to take a step back, and we were like, okay, let's rebuild this restaurant, EXP, and Frank gave us a lot of trust whilst doing that. Whilst he was there creating dishes, I was side by side with Josh. I was tweaking the service and things like that. And we got a really hands-on experience in running a business. and then also could slow down and just say like, okay, is this where we're going to open our restaurant? Let's learn who the customers are, who the diners are, what people like.
When it came time to open your own restaurant, what was some of the biggest lessons that you learnt sort of trying to create your own venue after working for other people for so long?
I guess the mindset, I think it's very easy to spend other people's money. And when it's your own, the mindset and the shift of how much does a chair cost, how much does a table cost is a very big eye-opener. But one of the most, I think creating everything, Josh and I had very different opinions on what the restaurant should look like and what the kitchen and what equipment. I tried to tell him, do you really need 2 ovens? Because I want this in the dining room and things like that. So working together to create a space and just trying to take the best bits of all the places you've worked at was very difficult for us. I was like, do you really need this massive fire grill? I don't think so. What about all these beautiful wine glasses? So that kind of balancing act to create a space that we were both happy with in the end. And yeah, just the mindset shift of, wait, this is my money. These bills are coming from me. It's not just like, yeah, let's just order this and order that. And, you kind of have to really think about it, creating the budgets. And even though we did a lot of budgeting work in our other venues, I think when it's your own, it takes a lot longer process, I guess.
What's it been like learning sort of the local clientele and the regulars, learning sort of what they're after compared to like your experiences of Hunter guests or Southern Highlands guests?
Yeah, I think Hunter guests and Southern Highland guests were, they might come to the restaurant once a year and you'd see them and you'd kind of recognize them. Yeah, I think they sat over there. Newcastle, people eat out often. People eat out. We have some regulars that come in, every Thursday for our Shell and Spritz aperitif hour, or, I see the same last name and I'm like, are you related to such and such? And they're like, yeah, it was my uncle. He told me about this restaurant. And I think Newcastle is very much a big country town. I like to say it's a city, but everyone knows everyone. Everyone has worked with or seen everyone. What happens in the restaurant is communicated to, hundreds of friends and family and Facebook groups. And so I think everything, it just seems a bit more connected than the Hunter Valley guests seem more connected. We get a lot of guests that say, my friend was talking about this dish and I had to come and try it. So yeah, it's very much a tight-knit community. And yeah, we see customers, once a week, once a month, once every couple of months for every special occasion. And they're more consistent, more regular if you can tap them in.
Tell us about your approach to front of house and particularly at Thermidor as well. Like, how do you get the best out of your team and what sort of experience are the guests sort of expecting there?
The experience, we call it relaxed dining. It's a term that we've come to. It's kind of halfway between casual and fine dining without using those words. And I always say it's professional, but relaxed and friendly. So we have systems and procedures that we follow more for the structure of running food and things like that. But I'm not one to have to have a speech to explain the menu and everyone has to say it the exact same way. I try and just let people's personalities shine through. I've had a lot of floor staff since opening, and I think at the start I still am a little bit, but I was very much a control freak as do it this way and that's the only way. And if that rubbed people the wrong way, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll teach the next person. And it wasn't until maybe 12 months in, I lost one of my core front of house members and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Like she was basically me, but she did everything my way. She was there from the start and she knew everything. And then the next full-time employee that I hired, I was like, okay, I've got to start from scratch. And I think I reevaluated how I was teaching just out of like a necessity that I had to. This person was very new and, people come and go. But I think now my approach is to try as best I can to collaborate with my team. And I found a really strong supervisor that I have at the moment. And she, very much, I can see her thriving when I let her communicate changes or, when I let her express how she's feeling about service. I can see how she works and I can see her happiness. And I think it's important. I think when you realize that you will get the best out of people just by listening and being a little bit more open and flexible, it really changed my mindset.
Is it hard sort of striking that balance between sort of the restaurant that you and Josh want to present and sort of what the locals want and getting that balance, that happy medium? Is it hard to find that point?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of our struggles come from the quality of produce and the quality of produce that we sell and we purchase into the costings and then we started saying that we were a casual venue, to which people think casual venue, you can get a dozen oysters for, $2 each and like similar to a pub in terms of pricing, which is very much not the case when you've purchased, the quality that we're trying to put out. So, and then we were like, our price is fine dining. People are assuming we're fine dining because of our background and they've heard our story. Should we lean into that or try and strike that happy medium? And that's kind of forced us to say, okay, maybe we're not casual. We're not quite fine dining yet, but we're not casual. And let's say that we're actually elevated when we're more of a, an elevated casual experience rather than like a relaxed casual vibe. So I think the pricing is definitely the thing that we're trying to work on at the moment, which is the happy medium. So people see a high price and assume, fine dining restaurant, but it's more about quality.
You mentioned that you're sort of 2 years in and you sort of found out sort of your identity as a restaurant. How do you see the next sort of couple of years playing out for you guys?
I think at the moment we were talking about this recently, what our goals are, and we kind of couldn't think of any. We just want to become, I guess, stay at the forefront of people's minds in terms of quality dining. And then we're working on at the moment just advertising in different mediums. We've been here for 2 years now, and there are still people in Newcastle that have never heard of us. So I guess we're working on just like creating that, expanding to the broader community of who we are and what we're doing and having a bit of fun with our team and trying to really put systems and procedures in place that, one day if we can, if we're lucky enough to open at another venue or, go in on something new, that Thermidor will still stay and will still be a standalone restaurant and will continue and be consistent as if Josh and I were there every day. So I think that's what we're working on at the moment, just to really kind of put Thermidor on the map as like, this is who we are and this is what we do. And we want to, the seafood restaurant down the road from us just celebrated 30 years. And I think that's, iconic. Like they've changed obviously and moved towards Newcastle's demand. And if we could see half that time, we would be over the moon. So,
well, you guys are doing amazing things in Newcastle. What do you love about what you do?
Do I love? I love just the connection with customers. So I very much try and, work in the background. I let my staff be who they are and on the floor. And I usually end the float or, stick to the bar and watch what I've created. And that brings me a lot of joy. But, regulars, where we are, there's a lot of foot traffic, people walking their dogs. And every time I look up, someone's looking back or waving because they've dined here and we know them and we know their names and, we know their dogs' names and things like that. So I think that brings me the most joy is just that we have kind of created our own little community and all I want to do is build on that and just expand that. The whole feeling like you've walked into our family home. Like, it is our second home and it's our second family that works there. So if people can appreciate what we're doing, then I think that's the greatest thing about creating Thermidor.
Well, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, and I can't wait to see where you take things from here. So Jess, please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Definitely will. Thank you so much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.